I'm a new TD. I'm from one of the lockdown counties in North Kildare, and I have to tell you that the upset that has been expressed to me by small businesses across North Kildare who follow the rules, who are just getting back up off their knees, opening up, and I have to tell you that in stark contrast to the treatment of some of your employees in the meat industry, every single one of them mentioned to me their employees, the fact that they have mortgages, they have bills to pay, they have food to buy, and they have back-to-school expenses for their kids. And I just wouldn't be doing my job as a TD, as a Teachtaddal, if I didn't give voice to that here today, how that compares with some of the sharp practices that have been reported in the media. My first question is to the HSA, please. You said there how many investigations that you had. In any of your announced or unannounced inspections, did you come across or did you uncover the bolting open of toilet doors? I read about in submissions for session 1 from the unions, where toilet doors were locked open, so that in female toilets, which meant that women, and some of them would be young women, they'd be women who might be menstruating, forced to use the toilets with doors open and forced to tend to their intimate hygiene basically in the open. Did you come across that? It's a yes or no, please, to HSA.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
To Meat Industry Ireland did. Are you aware of any of your employers have?
No, Deputy. No.
Well, will you make an investigation? Will you find out, please, if that happened? Because to me, that shows an imbalance of power that a factory owner would feel they could do that. And that happened since COVID, because the reason they gave was that so the women wouldn't have to be touching the doors of the toilet going into when they were using the bathroom. I have to tell you, as a woman, the women having to undress and attend to their intimate personal needs, I think it's repulsive. To borrow a phrase from an earlier committee, I think it's quite disgusting. Another question for Meat Industry Ireland. You opened your talk here, Cormac Healy. You mentioned that you said that COVID-19 travels through the communities into the industrial settings rather than vice versa. And, to a degree, that's true. But some of the workers that we have heard about, they are in fact living within their own community. They live frequently in conditions that are overcrowded and lack the necessary space and privacy that we all deserve as human beings. There's been talk of hotbeds where one staff member gets up and another person gets into their bed. These workers, I was talking about the balance of power there. These workers are further disadvantaged because they are here in Ireland under a work permit. 80% of the workers are not born in Ireland. They're foreign workers who have been brought in. So they're tied to their employer and their employment. There's wage reductions for accommodation. And really, it reminds me of this kind of indentured servitude that you hear about, in the Middle East, where migrant workers are abused like this. You said that you don't think the agency work is that big a factor. They call it precarious employment. I think it's kind of bogus self-employment.
If you want to allow the witnesses to respond.
Could you respond to that, please?
Firstly, Deputy, just to say that 20% of the workforce, rather than 80%, is on work permits that are issued by the government. There's a specific quota of them that were issued. So 20% of them are on work payments, are on work permits. The requirement on that, and in general, there isn't a requirement in terms of providing accommodation, and it's not something that has been custom and practice. As regards the permits, there is a requirement that for somebody coming in, that the employer, the company, would work with them source accommodation. They're not committed to using that, but many of them will use it in the first instances. But that's accommodation that I believe, you know, and is also checked in terms of, is that piece of the permit legislation being done? Are you helping them and sourcing them? But equally, Deputy, I mean, I agree, anything in relation to hotbedding or that is not, as was referred to, is not something that should be tolerated. But the industry is neither involved in mass provision of accommodation. I mean, this is the perception that's been put out there, but it's not involved in provision or mass provision of accommodation. It has to do these specific things for the work permit colleagues that come in. But beyond that, I don't think that it's really a feature or has been a feature of the terms of.
If any of the meat factories in Kildare,
I'm sorry,
if there's any time to spare at the end,
there is time to spare at the end. You can come in, but Deputy